Welcome to Power Up Recovery with Nutrition. It is time to make nutrition part of the conversation. I'm your host, Christina Veselak, and I'm so glad you're here. Did you know that it's our brain's job to allow us to cope with stress gracefully? But to do that, it needs to be fed optimally. Have you ever wondered why so many committed people relapse or maybe even die? Why so many people on psychotropic medication still feel lousy and still have cravings? What if the missing piece is food, the right food? What if the right nutrients like amino acids or even eating protein every 4 hours could actually balance your brain chemistry and your mood without medication and support lasting recovery? In this podcast, we explore the powerful connection between feeding your brain well, mental health, relapse, and recovery from addiction. We will share insights from experts, inspiring recovery stories, and practical strategies you can use today. Whether you're in recovery, a healthcare professional, or someone passionate about emotional well being, this show is for you. Let's dive in and discover how fueling your body and brain with the right food, the right amino acids, and other key nutrients can fuel your transformation today. Welcome. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Power Up Recovery with Nutrition. I am Christina Veselak, your host. And today I am delighted to welcome Dave Kenney from the Emergo Academy, who will also be speaking at our wonderful upcoming conference in Columbus in May, Feed the Recovering Brain. So, Dave, welcome and tell us a little something about yourself.
Oh, Christina, first of all, it's such a pleasure to be here with you and your community, and I'm really excited to join the conference in Columbus in April. And the reason why I'm really excited, and I hope that this resonates with some people, is you've always talked to me about your passion for moving beyond an addiction or the problem and
Mhm.
moving into recovery or their future or living a full, thriving life. And that speaks to me. That's
Yes.
what my practices have been about for 15 plus years. I'm hardwired that way. We all have challenges and problems, and if we stay focused on them, we will stay stuck. And so you've created a beautiful place with some really kick butt speakers list, and to help people create that thriving life or even maintain that thriving life that we all want. So I'm excited about the conference in April.
Wonderful. So, what are you going to be speaking on at the conference?
Well, my passion is recovery. My passion is
Mhm.
that, and so you can say it's addiction and recovery, but it's not addiction. It's this is about breaking behavioral patterns that have always held us back in some
That's right.
cases.
Breaking free.
Yeah, breaking free, rising above. Actually, the
Hmm.
name of our company is Emergo Academy, and the name of Emergo, the word emergo, is a Latin root, and it means to emerge or to rise above. And
Ah,
that's really what we're talking about is the ability to rise above. How do we do that in life? And there's a great story how how this just like life happens. This evolved for us and for myself particularly, but I believe in greatness in people, Christina. I
mhm.
don't believe that I don't believe an 8-year-old girl or a 10-year-old boy wakes up in the morning and looks forward to failing. And I certainly don't believe a 40-year-old looks forward to failing and losing a business or a marriage or being fired. So the question is, what happens? Why do we
Right.
struggle? Why do we have difficulty? And ultimately, I do really believe there's greatness in all of us. And at
Hmm.
times we need some help to find that. And there's many facets to it, but fundamentally, that's really where my work comes from that spirit.
Finding the greatness, uncovering. See, I like the idea of uncovering the greatness so that it has a chance to grow. See, Dave, I've always seen myself as a gardener. Okay. I love gardening. I love making beautiful flowers, floriferous yards. I'm not very good at it, but I love it anyway. And I've kind of carried this over into my counseling work. In fact, the name of my counseling clinic is Garden Gate Counseling because everybody within them have the seed of their own greatness.
Hmm.
And I believe the seed of who they and we were created to be. But sometimes it needs to be watered, it needs to be fed, it needs to be nurtured, it needs to be loved. And this is, my view of myself as a clinician is nurturing and loving the growth of my clients. So it sounds like you're kind of on the same wavelength.
Oh, I think 100%. I mean, there are people who build bridges and build buildings and build airplanes. I like to say I build people. And by
Mhm.
the way, I'm not much of a gardener, but when it comes to understanding and building people, I've dedicated more than 30 years of my life and career to human performance and education and helping people to flourish and thrive, even beyond the darkest moments of their life. And so, probably 2012, we opened, my business partner and my lovely spouse, Susan, and I opened a private residential recovery program. And in that program, what I didn't know that was going to happen is that became my classroom. So we've worked with over 2,000 people over the years. And the difference of running a private residential program, even though we had a large team of 28 people with psychologists and therapists and chefs and coaches and outdoor coaches and recreational health. I mean, the whole gamut, everything. We had
Mhm.
art therapy, equine therapy. It was a full immersive program
So
to
cool.
help
That
people.
is so cool.
Well, but what happened is it became my classroom. I didn't know that. I didn't know
Yeah.
that well, when you look back, it makes sense. But going into it, I didn't think of living on campus with people for over a decade, over 2,000 people, the learning and the growth that I would personally and professionally realize. The book over my shoulder, Actualized Recovery, came out of our work, and because we saw good people struggling. I mean, this we've just talked about this. Good people struggling, moms and dads and business people and young adults and teens, seniors who were struggling, and didn't want to struggle. And the question is why? And a lot of times it's shame based. A lot of times people blame others for making poor
Mhm.
choices. But when you understand this truth in science and in life, that the brain drives behavior. Okay, so
Yeah.
psychology and neuroscience don't they disagree on many things, but
Mhm.
psychology and neuroscience actually agree on this point, that the brain drives behavior. Well, then the question is, what is a behavior? A behavior are people's choices, good ones and not so good ones are my choices.
Mhm.
So if I want to change my choices, the first thing I got to do is rewire or change my brain. And we now know not only is it possible for everybody to do that, it's pretty simple. And
Mhm.
that's what this whole actualized recovery is. It's a brain first, not brain only, brain first approach to thriving in life.
I like it. I like it. And so, what's the name of the talk that you're going to be giving at the conference?
The illusion of addiction is the topic,
Ah.
and what does that mean? Um, I don't believe that anybody is stuck with an addiction or a behavior for life. I don't believe
Mhm.
this at all. And science shows us that that's not the case. So neuroscientists, and have nicknamed addiction the disease of neuroplasticity. And all neuroplasticity is how our brain is wired. So if we're
Mhm.
wired to, when I have wake up in the morning and I have a coffee and I go outside and I have a cigarette, that's my normal pattern. Well, a normal pattern or a habit is a brain thing. It's a brain
Mhm.
connection, and we can rewire that through action and changing our action over a period of time, and so that we adopt a new pattern. And probably there's Christina, there's two things we've all done in life. Well, most of us have done these. Um, Two things in life that are the most complex things for our brain ever to do. One is learning to walk. It
Mhm.
is one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult concept for our brains to get, and
Mhm.
that's why we're wobbly. And in time, our neurons rewire and they start to fire. The more a neuron fires, the stronger it wires. Then we get stable when we're walking. Well, the same thing with riding a bike. Riding a bike is a complex skill. Pedaling, balance, steering, awareness of my safety, where I'm going, my speed, my brake, all happen simultaneously. But when mom or dad are running behind the bike with a little son or a daughter learning to ride with the training wheels now off, the bike's wobbly, wobbly, wobbly. And one day you can let go of the seat and boom, your child takes off. That's the
That's right.
brain now has connected enough neurons and they're strong enough now that they can ride the bike safely. And in time, you can ride the bike without even really thinking about it because the brain is taken over control. Now, apply that to going to the bar and drinking. Apply
Mhm.
that now to any other social media. Apply that now to one of the worst addictions right now is online gaming or online gambling for people. So that's the brain being wired to make negative choices, and we can talk about why that is, but versus making healthy choices. And the science is called Hebb's law. Donald Hebb, a Canadian psychiatrist, discovered this in the 60s. It's called Hebb's Law, and we call it habits because
Mhm.
Hebb's Law and habits, put them together, habits. So we
Mhm.
have some fun with that. So that's what part of the conversation will be in April in
Okay.
Columbus. Part of the conversation is going to be these habits and how to change patterns and behaviors. So it's great. This conversation is incredible for individuals, but equally incredible for professionals to learn this to apply to their clients
Well, and you teach professionals how to apply this to
all
their
the time,
clients,
all
right?
the time. That's what we do at
Yeah.
Emergo Academy. We run a recovery coaching certification program. It's an international certification. In a couple hours, I'm meeting with a doctor out of New Jersey who we've trained and certified. She's 26 years general practice MD in New Jersey, and she's leaving the medical field because she feels like she's just a big insurance, an arm of an insurance company, and she wants to bring her medicine background in with our recovery coaching background. We've already certified her, and now we're working on the building the business and marketing of it. So, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists,
Mm.
counselors, addiction specialists, a reverend out of Montreal, a woman who runs women's shelters in London, in the UK. So it's an
Nice.
international education, and it really is about, you said this earlier, a good coach is a guide or a sage. All we do is shine the light. We don't do anything for anybody,
Right.
but
Right.
there is a process, there is a formula to empower people to make changes. We have this saying that people don't resist change. People resist being changed. So think of that
Mhm.
for a minute. People don't resist change or newness. They resist being told they have to change. And
That's
my
right.
evidence to that is you and I probably and everybody listening. How much do you like being told what you have to do? No, thank you. So don't tell me I can't eat the cookies because then I'm going to go off and eat the cookies.
Right.
But if I connect why I don't want to eat the cookies with my bigger why and my value system, I don't need to be told because I have this internal inspiration or motivation. And that's what our coaches do is we have a formula to help our coaches or guide people and find that internal inspiration so that they can
Mhm.
achieve what they absolutely truly want.
So is that a little bit like motivational interviewing?
Part of it is. Part of it's
Hmm.
motivational interviewing. Not all of it. Part of it is. Part of it is both values.
Hmm.
Another section of that is understanding about boundaries. And boundaries are they're often talked about, especially online and other places, but they're very misunderstood what a
Uh-huh.
boundary is. A boundary is got nothing to do with the other individuals, has nothing to do with them. You can't force people to do things or threaten people. Well, you can threaten them, but it doesn't work. Boundaries are just simply, Brene Brown has the greatest teaching on this. If anybody wants to look up Brene Brown, love her.
Mhm.
And her teaching is simple in this way: what's okay and what's not okay. So, what's okay in my life? What's not okay in my life? But, and here's the big but, and we've learned this in coaching the families of people who have been struggling with addictions, is the families want to tell them what to do and not to do. And well, what's your boundary? What's okay? What's not okay? But you have no boundary. There is no such thing as a boundary without a consequence or a result.
Yes, a pushback.
Well, no, there has to be a consequence. Sometimes it's a good consequence. Sometimes it is a good consequence. If you have a teenager and wants to borrow the car and you say yes, and but when it comes back it's clean and it's in the driveway and you're home before midnight and they do that, here's the consequence: they get to use the car again. Well, the other consequence is if they're late or there's wrappers in the car and all that stuff and it's late and it hasn't been taken care of, and then the other consequence is you don't get the car. And there's no discussion, there's no argument. What's okay, what's not okay, but there has to be a consequence, a good one, and sometimes a more challenging one. But it's not debatable. We don't have that conversation after the fact. We all know it before. Now I picked a pretty simple story, but that can get more complex when you're talking about other behaviors in life,
Sure.
marriages, and what's okay and what's not okay.
So, since this is a podcast on nutrition,
Yes.
where does feeding the brain what it needs to function optimally, which is my phrase,
Yep.
where does that fit into your whole kind of schema?
It has to. And I could go further in saying I'll get back to the nutrition in a second, but the brain is the most important organ in our body, and you
Yeah.
have to feed the brain. You got to give it water. You must give it sleep. You must give your brain sleep. People think, oh, I can cut corners and go 5 hours. No, your brain actually operates very slowly then, and there's brain fog. So all of these things impact our lifestyle choices, impact our brain function and brain performance.
And
And
we have to move.
well, the movement is important. There's something called biophilia. Biophilia is the impact of movement and nature, including animals, on the human brain and the human body. And so it's if you move and if you can. Now, I'm in Canada right now and it's pretty cold in February, but I still get
Mhm.
outside. But if you live somewhere where it's decent and warm, moving your body outside, not on a treadmill, is very, very important and very helpful. Now let's get back to your question on nutrition. So, from a brain point of view, which is again, the brain drives everything. So if you want the brain to operate or function optimally, excuse me, if you want your brain to function optimally, you have to feed it good food. And there
Mhm.
is there is good nutrition and bad nutrition. There is nothing in between. It's either good for your brain and your body, or it's not good for your brain and your body. Please understand a Snickers bar once a month doesn't fall in the it's okay category. It still falls in the not so good for your brain. So understanding what and I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not going to get into what exactly is great. I know that fats are good for the brain. I know that carbohydrates are good for the brain, some carbohydrates. I know that water is excellent for the brain, but the brain needs proper whole nutrition to thrive. And if you wake up in the morning and feed your brain a Red Bull and some toaster strudel thing, you're not going to think well. You're not going to behave well. Your emotions are going to be like a total roller coaster. The hangries where you're hungry and angry, and then the likelihood of negative behaviors uh, drug usage, alcohol, cigarettes, all of those things will increase substantially if you don't take care of your nutrition.
Well, and I think that you're also going to be more likely to lose touch with your values and with your goals and with that kind of guiding North Star that we want our choices to be in alignment with.
Well, yes, is my short answer. And the reason why is because your brain isn't functioning properly. So
Right.
if your brain is in a state of chaos, you're going to look for things to calm it. So if you have over caffeinated your brain and you haven't got proper sleep, you may use alcohol to calm your brain or marijuana to calm your brain. Your brain will search for
Right.
relief.
Yes,
And you,
always.
always. And so when I introduce those things into my system, now the value system of my children and going to their soccer game or being home on time or not spending my money, all of those things go out the window. So
Right.
the result of having a poor diet and poor sleep patterns or poor lifestyle has a dramatic impact on one's brain. So here's a great example. Christina, you and I, you didn't know this. By the way, this is a joke, but bear with me here. You and I, Christina, we just bought into the newest horse that's going to run the Kentucky Derby this year.
Okay.
Okay, you and I are the co-owners. All right.
Uh,
Okay, this is a multi-million dollar horse in a multi-million dollar race. All right, what are we going to feed it? Are we going to
You're going
cut
to
the
eat it really well.
really well? The best nutrition we can for performance, optimal performance. We're not going to cut corners and just give it anything.
Mhm.
Well, dog show people do this for dogs. If they have a show dog, they give it the best food so the coat is lush and shiny. Their muscles are strong, their bones are strong, their teeth are strong, so they perform and show well. Same thing with a
Right.
racehorse. At what point are we humans going to treat ourselves with the same dignity and response that we deserve the best food that we can afford and provide for our bodies for optimal performance?
Well, Dave, I think that raises a really important point because there's so many of us who don't value ourselves well enough to put out the time and the money and the effort to feed ourselves optimally. We don't love ourselves enough. We put ourselves last, and it's just not something we do until we heal and grow and learn how to feed ourselves and get into that relationship of love with ourselves. But this is what gets me. If you bought a thoroughbred horse and it's your job to feed it and nurture it and keep it well and healthy, that actually is the job of a treatment program owner who is inviting all these people into his facility. His job is to turn them into racehorses. His job is to teach them and allow them to now thrive in life. And yet, how many treatment program owners think that feeding their people is just an afterthought? It's just something we have
Well,
to
well,
do.
well,
So we'll give the least amount of money because
right.
feeding people is not a therapeutic issue. And
Well,
I think that feeding
that
people is the core of the therapeutic process.
this goes to the fundamental value. You said you used the word values 10 minutes ago. This
Yeah.
goes to the values of a therapeutic program. Our food budget was the second highest line item. Our accountants went, "No, you're crazy." So we had to have them out on the property to have a lunch. True story. They said there's no way you're spending $26 a meal on average with people. So we are. And we have to. The oils have to be the
Mhm.
best oils. The meat has to be grass-fed, grass-finished meats. Like go down the list, the vegetables and fruits, organic fruits and vegetables. Um, we had high-grade supplements as well, and that goes to the value system of what people have for their program, and understanding that the food will impact the brain, the body, and the spirit.
Yes.
Well, if people are here to heal, that only makes sense. But you can take this further, Christine, and have this same conversation about hospitals. You go and have green Jello, red Jello. Where's the nutritional impact there?
Yeah.
Those decisions aren't made. The value system there is not about the health and well-being. The value system there is about a line item, budget item made by accountants on the profitability of the business. Now that you can have another conversations about insurance companies and all of that. I can't control that. Here's what I can control. I can bring education to people and empower people, and they make choices based on their values. And you said something beautifully. When we do our values project,
Mm-hmm.
gosh, I've never done a study. It's over 90%. Well over 9 out of 10 people. It's probably more like 99 out of 100 people do not put themselves even in the top five of their values, let alone number one. And people push back over and over and over saying it's selfish for me to put myself number one. A mom. Moms struggle with this because a mom's role is to give and provide for their children.
Mm-hmm.
But if the mom doesn't put herself first, at some point, mom's not going to show up anymore.
Exactly.
So there's a conversation that needs to be had about the value system and where do you fit? Where do I fit? I am responsible for me. And here's the thing. Here's a potential life changer for everybody. You are responsible for your 90-year-old self today.
Mm-hmm.
Today. Your 90-year-old self, you're responsible for the outcome. And it starts when you're 30, 50, 70. When
That's right.
that you are responsible for your 90-year-old self. And when you understand that, okay, then that means movement and sleep and food. Now here's the other part of our life is just is just how busy we are. I don't think people, again, I'm going to go back to this. I don't think people intentionally don't want to, but driving home on a Thursday after 4 days of tough work and stress, the thought of having to cook versus picking up a pizza, people go to convenience. So where's your value system?
That's right.
And so that and how prepared are you for the week? Did you on Sunday really spend time and create a family event around cooking meals and getting them ready for the week? Or are you winging it as the week goes along? So those are decisions everybody gets to make. But I really know the power in feeding the body and feeding the brain, and so that you can be your optimal self. It's really, really important.
Absolutely. But you were talking about habits
Mhm.
earlier, Dave.
Yep.
And I mean, I struggle with this too. I struggle with the habit of taking time to prepare food,
Okay.
prepare to feed myself well and effectively and as optimally as I possibly can. So these are habits that we have to learn, that we have to develop, that we have to practice, that every week we have to make the decision, yes, I and my health is important enough to set aside this time, to do this extra little bit of work, to put this little extra bit of money into it. And I want to say that treatment program owners have the same responsibility to their clients to put that little bit of extra effort into feeding their clients' brains optimally so they can have the, clinical term, best optimal outcomes, which means the people leave treatment able to thrive.
And when you get home though too, I mean, so you leave. Let's say you find the perfect nutritional combination of the treatment program, but you haven't learned anything. You go home and you start eating poorly, and you have no emotional regulation, and that's going to cause you to self-soothe with a substance or a behavior that's negative.
Yeah.
There's a complex answer there, but let's go into habits for a minute. So the number one day of the year, we all know this, the number one day of the year of all the promises of change, resolutions, New Year's Eve.
Mhm.
Okay, we all know that. Did you know that the number one day, the second Friday in January is known as Quitter's Day? It has a nickname. The second
I did not know
Friday,
that.
the second Friday, you can look it up. The second Friday of January every year, so it's less
Yeah.
less than 2 weeks, is the number one day of the year where the most people quit a new habit or a new program or a new thing. So I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to go to the gym. Gyms know this, that people stop
Mm,
showing up. The number one day where the drop off happens is the second Friday, of January, Quitter's Day. So why is that?
right.
Why do we have people, good people with great intentions who want to change something? And I'm going to save more money. I'm going to stop gambling. I'm going to stop drinking. Oh, by the way, dry January, the second Friday of January is the number one day when people start to drink again. Weight loss, gyms, it goes across the board. So the question is why? Well, the brain is wired to keep us alive. And I'm not talking about the genes. I'm not talking about the chemistry and dopamine and serotonin. I'm talking about how the brain wires, how it fires. So I'm talking about, I've got my phone here. I'm talking about the hard drive in my phone or the hard
Hmm.
drive in my computer, the computer processor, the chip.
Right.
And you can upgrade that. And when you upgrade it, the phone and the computer will work faster, better, with less energy. So that's called these things in life, these patterns in life are called habits. Habits are very misunderstood. A habit is formed in the brain.
Hmm.
And a habit is formed when neurons, I've said this before, when a neuron fires, and the more it fires, the stronger it wires. So if these are baby neurons, and if you're not watching the video, just they look like threads. But
Hmm.
the more I do something, the stronger it becomes, like a string, and then a rope, and then a chain. And so when a neuron is dominant that way,
Hmm.
and I've taught my brain to smoke a cigarette, to have a drink, or to have fast food, when I'm stressed, my brain reacts to stress and goes, "Oh, this is how we feel better. Go get the pint of Haagen-Dazs."
Yeah.
Well, there's only one way to change that, and that's to create a new pattern or a new habit. All right?
Hmm.
Well, if you have the Haagen-Dazs in the house, if you have the, let me take it out of food for a minute. If somebody's struggling with alcohol and they come home from a treatment center, one of the number one recommendations, get the alcohol out of the house. Get it out of the house. Why? Because it creates an extra step for somebody to have to leave the house or go buy it. There's an extra step versus just reaching for it. Well, the same thing happens with food. And if we don't want the potato chips in our system and our diet, and we clean our pantries out, don't just put it in a box in a pantry and think,
Right.
oh,
Right.
it's just in the freezer, and I'll just put a sign on a little. I've had people do this. I'll put a sticky on it. Don't open till March. Well, that's not.
Yeah.
The brain doesn't remember that. The brain goes, oh, it's there. Go get it. And now,
That's right. I tell people that until you close, absolutely shut the door to your addictive behavior, that it is no longer an option under any circumstances whatsoever. If you leave that door cracked, like, well, maybe one day, right?
smokers
We're
know
gonna
this.
slither,
Smokers know
we're
it.
gonna slither through.
You
Yeah.
can't keep a pack of smokes in somebody's purse or car and say, "Well, I'm never going to ever smoke." They have to get rid of the cigarettes. They know this. So the other part of your question was, how do I prep for the week? And that is discipline and setting aside what day you're going to shop, and what day you're going to cook. And so we've got various days where I go to the farmers market and stuff. I love shopping. I do most of the shopping and hit the farmers market. But we create meal prep time together, and it becomes, you turn on the music and you turn it into a little bit of a party and make multiple meals. The lunch I had today was made yesterday on purpose, so that we in the middle of the day we had I had a big sweet potato and had some broccoli. That was my lunch. I loved it, but it was all made yesterday so that
Mhm.
I had fast food today. It was fast and it was real food, and it was
Right.
delicious, and my energy is on point, and my brain is on point. So it really is about discipline, and the more you do this, Christina, the more often you repeat this cycle, you're firing the neurons, you're creating an environment, excuse me, where there's positivity. It's not a chore. This is something you love to do, and you create an environment around that. Put your music on, dance, have the kids or a spouse with you, and then you set that aside. And when you eat this way, celebrate it each time. You need to have a celebration with it, going, oh man, look at this. This is fantastic. And that again fires the brain and it creates these new patterns and these new habits. Think of riding a bicycle. You have to do this over and over. And
That's
in
right.
time, this becomes your dominant pattern where the thought of going to fast food now is so foreign to your brain. It's like, no, I'm going to go do
Mm,
this because that's what the brain is used to doing. That is
exactly.
called a habit using Hebb's law. Again, our nickname, habits.
And what is Hebb's law again?
Hebb's law is a psychologist in Canada called Donald Hebb who understood that the more a neuron fires, the
Okay.
stronger it wires. And
Okay.
Joe Dispenza teaches this. Daniel Amen teaches this. This
Yeah.
is rock solid science. And this is what a habit is. A habit is formed in the brain, and it is formed by more by doing than thinking about something. You've got to get up. So going to the gym. If you go to the gym 3 times, it's still tough. It still feels uncomfortable. But if you go to the gym 100 days in a row, you
Yeah.
guess what happens on 101 day? It feels weird not to go to the gym.
That's right.
Okay, well,
That's right.
what happened? What happened is your brain is used to this pattern, and that's where the neurons become more dominant and they want to continue to do things. So when I feel stressed, if I feel stressed and I go for a walk, or if I feel stressed and go to the bar,
Hmm.
okay, well do the same thing for 30 days. Every time I stress, go for a walk. Every time I'm stressed, go to the bar. You're training your brain to ride the bike. Which bike do you want
Yeah.
to get on?
Yeah. Well, exactly. And this is why I tell people that you can't take something away, your drink at 5 o'clock, your, plate of cookies, your bowl of ice cream with your movie after dinner. You can't take something away and leave a void. You have to replace it with something that feels good and that's constructive and that you will then enjoy enough to keep going. So instead of coming home and pouring yourself a drink, you come home and take the dog and go for an enjoyable walk.
Right. I
That you
agree,
have to
agree with you.
replace it with a new habit.
By the way, when I see you in April, I got to bring some of our cookies. We make the best banana oatmeal raisin cinnamon cookies, and they are so incredibly no fats in them. They're incredibly healthy. So there are ways to eat healthy and eat the
Yes,
foods we love. So the
yes.
the
And
hardest food I had to give up was popcorn. And I choose not to eat popcorn and GMO corn and all of that stuff and hard on my gut. Here was the hardest part, going into movie theaters. Like I had no problem at home, but I go into a movie theater, you'd smell it, you'd hear
yeah,
it, and I'd sit down and I used to have this, this desire to do this, from the bucket to my mouth. I truly had a pattern in my brain, an addiction,
yes, yes.
but I had a pattern in my brain to want to eat popcorn every time I went to a movie theater, and it took I don't know how many times, 10 times or 15 times, but now I go into a movie theater, I don't smell it, I don't see it, I don't hear it, I don't crave it
That's right.
at all. Well,
That's right.
what happened? I rewired my brain.
You rewired your brain. Yeah, yeah. You broke the old habit and created a new one that does not include popcorn.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I take the banana oatmeal cookies in my pocket. I'll come clean. Sometimes I do that.
There you go. There you go. Well, anything else you want to add before we close it for today?
It what we're talking about for people is nothing people don't know. Eat well, sleep well, move well. Um, we've all heard this.
Hmm.
The question people can ask themselves is, well, then why is it so hard?
Mhm.
And I will again offer the brain first approach, or the brain first understanding that the behaviors, the negative self-destructive behaviors, whether it's Haagen-Dazs or whether it's a drug or an alcohol or gambling, yelling and
Mhm.
rage, the behaviors we don't want have been ingrained in our brain, and we can change those to get what you really, really want. So be kind to yourself, because this isn't about a lack of willpower. I'm not talking about a lack of willpower, that you're weak and you can't do it. This is about brain power. And when you grasp that and you understand how you can rewire your brain, you can
Mhm.
change anything and everything in your life. And it actually is, it is easier than we have than we're led to believe, because we've always relied on willpower. This is not willpower. This is brain power. And if you want to eat well, live well, and if you want to thrive, it starts with a brain first approach.
Well, that's what we remember. And I'm going to add to that, it begins with a well fed brain first approach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The more, if I drank a, if I wouldn't, but if I drank a Red Bull, my brain would just be like a beat. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to sit still. I wouldn't be able to think. I'd be off the charts. And if I need a Red Bull to get going in the morning, the question isn't the morning. The question is, what did I do the day before? And
That's
so
right.
this nutrition package that you are offering the world in healing. Oh, by the way, we haven't even talked about how important it is to overcoming physical addictions. That the brain, if the brain craves glucose, guess what the body turns alcohol into? So there are better, more healthier ways to diminish cravings by eating well and using great nutrition than by using substances.
Absolutely. Dave, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure, very enjoyable pleasure talking with you.
Christina,
And
I'm bringing my cookies to you in April, and if anybody wants one, if you gotta have to see me early because they'll be gone fast. But I'll bring some down in to Columbus, and I am pumped to be there, and I'm pumped to learn from others there, because I know you have a great deep lineup of experts to help people thrive. Isn't that nice?
it really is, makes my heart glow. All right. Well, thank you all for listening to us today and the brain first approach of Dave Kenney, and actually of mine as well. See you
Mm.
next time, and please like us and share this episode with your whole community. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Power Up Recovery with Nutrition. I'm Christina Veselak, your host, and I hope today's episode has inspired and equipped you with new insights and tools to support your recovery journey or practice. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who could benefit from the knowledge shared here. Stay connected with us for more episodes filled with practical advice, expert wisdom, and inspiring recovery stories. Remember, nutrition is a powerful tool in mental health and relapse prevention. Power up your recovery today. I'm Christina Veselak, and I'll see you next time.